Oh, you're right. I hope your lino designs are going well at home. So by this stage, you should have done your Posca slash color drawing design inspired by Warhol, and you should be working on, if I scroll down through student tasks, on your lino design. Say you could working on your lino design. Now, all the information that you need is in here and also in student tasks, so make sure you are familiar with it. I've also shared with you a video that explains this task and goes through those slides and what's required. So if you are confused, make sure you go back and watch the video. The video will be called, go back to your stream. I'll attach it again, but the video will be called Explanation of Posca Black and White Designs. So make sure you've watched that. What I'm going to do today is give you a start on the theory lesson or the written task lesson. So I'll just go back up. Up. Okay. So this little class is going to be informal assessments. So it's going to go towards an aspect of your report. It's art writing. So we're trying to get you prepared here for your theory task that's going to be coming up in your assessment, which was due week 5 at term 2. So just make sure in terms of art, make sure you're staying up to date with what your teacher posts on Classroom. There's no need to work ahead, just stay on track with what we've posted on Classroom. It is a 16-week unit, so just make sure you're up to date. So we're going to be working on this particular task today, which you're going to submit, and it's going to be marked. Now, you'll spend 1.5 lessons, we'll say 1.5 to 2 lessons, seeing though we're not here in front of class, learning about Andy Warhol. And Andy Warhol is the artist you'll be looking at for your formal assessment in your notification and using the conceptual framework. There's a Google Slides, which I'll open in just a moment. All tasks and links are in there that you need. And there's going to be 2 tasks, some quick questions. Now, that first part, quick questions, is not marked, but it's done in order for you to gain some knowledge about Andy Warhol in order to fill out this informal assessment task, which will be marked. And there's some other vocab lists there to help you. This will be submitted by the end of week 1 at the latest. Okay, so we're talking about part 2 there. So we're going to get started. If you open up that link, it will look like this. Okay, so I'm just going to spend a couple of minutes going through this, and then you can go and watch the videos and read the resources yourselves. So you probably know a little bit about Andy Warhol, but hopefully this will give you some more understanding. We're going to be looking at something called the conceptual framework in art. So it's a way to look at and talk about art. The conceptual framework, I'll just present. The conceptual framework is about the art world, and it can be broken down into 4 things. When we think about art, we can talk about the artist, the artwork they create, the audience in which they're communicating to, and the world in which they work, or the world in which they're communicating about. So if we think about pop art, we think about the world of pop art being consumerism, mass media, popular culture is what Andy Warhol, the artist, is communicating through his artwork. That will make a bit more sense when we look at this diagram. So this is a great little diagram to explain the conceptual framework. So if I do that again, Andy Warhol, who is the artist, creates artworks about the world, being pop art, consumerism, and he communicates that to the audience. So we're talking about these 4 agencies, and what's important is the relationships between them. Audiences have a reaction to the artwork. Artists communicate to audiences through an artwork. So that's all those relationships we talk about there. You can read through these yourselves, just getting a little bit of an idea about what we can talk about. The artist is the creator. The world is the world in which it's created. So we can talk about the art world. Is it pop art? Is it cubism? What sort of art movement? Or of course, we can talk about what's going on in the greater world, such as wars, events, industrial revolution. All those things influence the artist and the artwork. The artwork itself is the physical object. And the audience, now, my dad hates art. He has a very different opinion to me. So audiences are allowed to have different reactions, and there's no right or wrong. People have their opinion. So audiences react to artwork in different ways based on their knowledge, their interests, their age, their location, their culture, all of those things. So you can have a little read through this yourself. Artist, who are they influenced by? What's their purpose or their intention? When considering the artwork, we can look at what signs and symbols. What's it made out of? How are the elements and principles used in the artwork? The audience. Who is the audience? Have they changed over time? How do they relate to the artwork? And are the intention of the artist conveyed to the audience? And the world? What type of world is reflected? Was the artist influenced by the world? And how do we learn about the world at the time? So we're going to be looking at Andy Warhol through those four agencies. We're going to be analysing and describing the artwork, the artist, the audience, and the world. Okay, let's get to Andy Warhol, and I'm sure you know a little few things about Andy Warhol and seen some of his works around. We're going to be using him as inspiration for our Photoshop task, which is up and coming, which I will set next week. If you want to have a look in holidays, but no rush, we can do that next term. Andy Warhol's artworks. So we scroll through, we're starting to see, like Liechtenstein, nice bright colours. We're starting to see something that looks a little bit more simple than a realistic artwork. Marilyn Monroe, a celebrity, a person from pop culture, from the movies of the time of the 1960s. Some repetition, just like newspapers were repeated and mass-produced and made over and over and over again. Andy Warhol himself wanted to be like a machine, so he didn't produce one masterpiece. He produced artworks that could be replicated many, many times. You remember this from our pop art introduction PowerPoint. We've got repetition here of Mr. Elvis Presley. Soapboxes, everyday things of the time that people might have thought were boring. Soup cans, everyday objects that anybody walking down the street can relate to. Some more celebrities, Mickey Mouse, repetition once again, Muhammad Ali, Michael Jackson. So he concentrated a lot on celebrities. And for your Photoshop portrait, you'll be creating something similar with your own faces. Coca-Cola bottles. Now the one on the right, does it remind you of something? Supermarket shelves, perhaps? A vending machine? The idea again, mass production over and over again. Okay, all about Warhol, his artworks and his world. Now you got to go and watch a video. I won't watch it with you, but you got to watch a little bit of video here to see what the fuss is about this artist. And then you get to read an article. It's from an art textbook, so it should be quite easy to understand for you. Still, to try and get your head around Andy Warhol, because you'll be using him, as I said, for this informal task and the task at the end, which is the formal assessment task. So get your head around him. You might even wish to write some notes. Artwork discussion. What material would he have used to make his artworks? Now, he used something called screen printing, and this allowed him to produce works over and over again, like a machine. So here's another little video to watch him with the silk screen printing process. That's the technique he used. So watch that little video about how he made his artworks. Some great information here. I won't read through all of it. What was happening in the world? We should be aware of this because we've looked at pop art and what was happening in the 1960s. Advertisements, magazines, posters, popular culture, technology. They wanted to be like a machine, and they look like they would be from an advertisement, maybe from a magazine. Posters, billboards, eye-catching, vibrant, bold, simplified images. All of these words are very pop art, and hopefully they can make it into your response. Famous people, imagery, society of the time, everyday life. These two slides here will help you in your response. Where did he produce his artworks? Now, I've said a few times he wanted to be like a machine. So he actually produced his artworks in a place called the factory, like a machine, where he could do things over and over again. By day, it was an art production centre. By night, he had lots of parties with lots of celebrities, and it became a social gathering venue. As you can see, artists, musicians, underground superstars, it made him help his paintings. He collaborated with them as well. So it was a place of art and socialising. A little timeline of his life and the years that he worked. So you can see he was working within the 1950s and the 1987. Okay, so your task, the first task in order for you to gain some knowledge about Warhol is answering quick questions. So you can see there was a link to a document. For my classes, I've actually posted it as an assignment post on Classroom, which I'll get to in a moment. Who is the artist? Why is he famous? What are his artworks about? What do you think made the artworks recognisable to the audiences? Is this art style similar to someone else you've studied? And how did he make his artworks? So get your head around those little things and you'll be doing those quick questions. Now for my class, for example, let's go back. I have created for week 11, so just make sure these quick questions are done by next week. Okay, open up these, make a copy of it, boys, and submit it only when you're finished. Those are the 5 questions. You'll submit that on Google Classroom once, of course, you've watched the video, which will look like this. The link's in that document, and there is the article. You'll have a little read through, and you'll be answering those 5 questions. Thanks, guys. In terms of what is next, where are we? Okay, in terms of what is next, you don't need to get onto it yet. I mean, you can if you like. You'll be doing the informal assessment task. So all the links are in there if you have run out of work and you want to work ahead. Thanks, boys.